Where we start.
We're ready.
All right, cool. All right, hey everybody, welcome back to 42 Days of Magical Practice with Brian Osborne and Dustin Neese.
Here we are again.
Here we are again, day 5, I think. Yes.
Yeah, they all kind of blend together after a while.
Yeah. And so if you haven't gotten the pattern of what we're doing yet, there's basically going to be 3 days of focus on a particular exercise. And each of the 3 videos for that day will cover different aspects of that one exercise so that we can have a little time to acclimate to it and get a feel for it before we move on to something else.
And there is a method to the madness. When you do that and come at it from different angles, it gives us a much broader understanding of the practice itself, and also gives us a jumping off point, because no matter how much we do in these short videos, any of these practices, can go much deeper. And so this is giving you sort of a nice, well-rounded cover on the well sort of, approach to, the practice itself, and gives us a nice sort of 3-dimensional angle of all the things that we're looking for, and any one of which could be delved into much deeper at a later point, right? So
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, point 2 from observation.
Yeah.
If you have done this practice, I think we can all agree that, we're most times amazed at how freaking crazy our thoughts are. So, basically, I've rarely come across anybody who didn't think that, like, oh my God, I can't believe I thought that. And so, no worries, you're in the majority, okay? So I usually think that people that don't have, aren't surprised by the thoughts that their mind, their conscious mind is thinking on a regular basis, basically haven't been alive very long. So, it happens. So no worries. And that's what we're going to talk about with this segment. This segment is all about, the thing not to do. And I don't want to focus on what not to do, but it's important in this case. And that is, please, please, please do not judge yourself on your thought process. This is a critical point. And again, getting us closer to that place of unity and farther from the idea of duality, right? So no good, no bad. It just is what it is. And that's it. Just because you had the thought doesn't mean that you are acting on the thought, right? So it's just the way your mind is processing, and we want to get a very clear view of that. We need that baseline so that as we adjust through these practices, as we get closer to our ideal state, whatever that is for you, we can gauge our progress by where we are compared to that baseline that we observed in the beginning. And so if we don't have that, we don't know where we're going. It's sort of like going on a trip, but we don't have a destination. So we're just sort of wandering around. And as we know, when people get lost in the woods, they just sort of wander in circles. And so they never really get anywhere except in this circle, right? So we have a destination. You've already chosen the destination. So we need to have that baseline so we know where we're starting from and what we need to adjust in order to get to that destination in the most efficient manner possible and in the most effective amount of time as well, right? So don't judge. Nobody else is judging. Nobody else knows what's in your head, and those energies, entities, whatever you want to call them, that do know what's in your head, they're not judging you either. So, we're always our worst enemy when it comes to that. We judge us. And so, so have some compassion for yourself. Don't judge the way that your thoughts are processing. Observe it, know what it is, and, make your few notes in your journal after you're done that. Continue with your observation. But as the thought comes up, and you acknowledge it and let it go, you're not attaching any judgment to that thought. Really, it's a little tricky to do it because we're so used to doing it in our real life, right? Like, ooh, I shouldn't have said that right after I said something. You know, like, ooh, I shouldn't have done that. Oh, I shouldn't have added to that gossip, or ooh, I shouldn't have been. You know, we're constantly judging ourselves for things that we do, and so you know, it could be on the other side too, like, oh, well, that was very compassionate of me to do that, you know. Good job, Brian. You know, it's like, you know, but it tends to be it tends to be a little more on the negative side for most people. But you know, there are those that, you know, just sort of, you know, have to constantly be patted on the back, and they can do that to themselves as much as they can get other people to do it for them. You know, so both things, you know, they are what they are. You just want to recognize them. That's all it is. And see the pattern again. Again, it's all about patterns. Mm-hmm. And if I, you know, what we've produced, what is in your life right now is the consolidation of a pattern. And so in order to interrupt that pattern, I need to know what that pattern is, and then be able to, you know, institute another pattern in its place. But there's a transition point between those two. So if I don't have a clear view of those two things, how am I going to adjust myself to that?
And would you say that you know, being emotionally invested in a judgment either way about those patterns or those thoughts is a way of staying attached to them? Absolutely, because you're attaching. You know, a judgment is an energetic value, right? So it's like, it's attaching, you know, it's like, think of the energy that you're generating, the energy that's flowing through you is, you know, infinite number of fine tendrils that are going out. And every time I have a thought about something, especially a strong judgment-like thought or emotional thought, I'm attaching to it, and that's holding that in place, right? And so I'm constantly feeding that from that source that's within me and flowing through me. That's being fed by that. Once you retract those things with non-judgment, right? That's more energy that I have to apply to something else, right? So in that context, it makes sense, right? Why we do that, why we sort of go to that place of no judgment, because I want to have as much energy to pour into what I want. And a lot of times these judgments that we make about all these things in our lives, it's holding that pattern in place, and it's making us fatigued because we're draining off all this energy all day long because we're feeding them to hold them into that particular pattern, that particular place. So if I want to sort of change that pattern, the first thing I do is starve it of energy, right? So don't keep feeding it. Don't make it stronger. Don't make it bigger, right? I'm not going to judge it in any way, shape, or form. I just want to change to something else that I desire more right now. I have that experience. I learned something from that experience. I don't want that experience anymore. I'm shifting my focus to something else that I want more. And so, but in order to do that, I have to have the energetic currency to buy that, so to speak, right? So, and where do I get that? I withdraw my investment in this other pattern and shift it to the pattern that I want. That's in essence, that's what we're doing. We don't have to think about it too technically. It happens on its own. It's the transition that goes there. And it does, you know, that shift is both, believe it or not, that is actually a biological shift as well. You know, there's science to prove that, you know, neurons and the neural pathways that are established, the patterns that I see, the neurons that fire in that pattern, they fire together, they wire together. So it becomes these, you know, plexus of neurons that, you know, continually force my body to feel a certain way, and that helps me to think that certain thought. And it becomes this feedback loop that's unending until I intentionally withdraw my judgment or my feeling about that thing and shift it to something else that I like. It's very simple, right? It's always amazing to me how you have a new thing in your life, whatever that is. Let's say a new relationship, and you will be happy
to get done work, drive cross town through all kinds of traffic, go out of your way to go to the one supermarket that has the ingredients that you need to make this incredible meal for your new love, and you're just so excited to do it, and you don't even, the traffic doesn't bother you, you got the radio turned on, and you're bopping around, everything's great, you go and you do that, fast forward several years, and it's like, hey, can you get some milk on the way home? It's like, oh, right? It's even a store on the way home. Yeah. It doesn't even take 5 minutes out of your path, and yet that's, so it's like this pattern that's, established and fired till you're not thinking about it anymore. And so anything that deviates from that is going to be like this interrupted pattern. And so I don't want to do that. And so how do we keep that charge? How do we keep that state going? It's like, again, life is an adventure. What am I looking for? How do I keep making that better and better? What do I do to do that? How do I keep that progressing, evolving, not devolving, right? It doesn't have to. Those are not things that are absolutes, right? It's not like every relationship at a certain point has to devolve. That's not a principle. That's not a universal law. Right. That's shit that we came up with to explain why we lose interest or what's going on, right?
That we bought into.
That we believe in. That we believe, and then
we carry out.
That's right. So no, I don't believe in that when waiting for the other shoe to drop. It's like, no, I'm tying that mother on, because it's not going to drop. I'm going to make it better into something else. It will evolve, but I'm going to make it evolve into something even better.
More and more.
More and more. That's right. More and more of what you want and less of what you don't want, right? Mm-hmm. My energy gets focused in that direction. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of that is paring away, right? So in neurology, we call it pruning, right? Mm-hmm. Pruning those neural networks, pruning those neurons that fire in that pattern where things become unconscious and the negative stuff starts to take over and it just becomes the pattern every day and you can't get out of it. We take the energy away from them. We do that by interrupting the pattern, interrupting your routines, erasing those routines. Maybe not even erasing them, just adjusting them, right? It doesn't have to be. We hear it talked about in other books that we've all read, right? So going way back now, it's like Don Juan, Castaneda, it was like erase your personal history. And everybody went, that's so profound. But what the hell does it mean?
Yes.
In the context of that book, there are very few people that understood what that really meant.
Right.
So, it's not disown your family, go to Sonora and, try to, meld with the Yaqui Indians or become some kind of peyote master or whatever. So that's not the case, right? It's break your routines. If you don't like what's going on and you want to shift that, be in a malleable state where you can shift your energy into whatever you're doing at the time.
And this is one very simple and powerful way to do that.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you're talking about erasing your personal history, simply withdrawing your emotionally invested judgment about the thoughts in your own mind is slowly just,
it's starving.
Recovering that energy that's invested in that pattern.
And then you have that to promote the new way.
And they show, and we've talked about this, about neuroplasticity, that it's not that, that those memories or those thoughts are completely inaccessible.
No.
But that, as you begin to invest less energy in them, they physically
atrophy. Right. The connections atrophy. And because there's a neurotrophin is a chemical that makes the neurons where they connect, bond to that site. And so there's only a certain amount of it available at any given time. So the idea is that in order for a new neuron to be extended or be created there and connect and make a network.
Which is perfectly analogous to creating something new in your life.
Absolutely.
No difference.
So it has to get that limited amount of neurotrophin to make that connection adhere. And so where does it get it from? It gets it from the one that no longer needs it and separates that firing mechanism, right? So separates that old way of doing it, and that gets sort of reconstituted into the matrix of brain matter and becomes something else, right? And the new one gets attached where that one is firing and firing and firing and wiring together in clusters and groups so that a stronger signal can go in that direction, and it becomes much more automatic as well. So, and that's just the physical component of that. So it isn't just an emotional or a mental attitude, it actually translates into a physical characteristic of your body, and you feel that, you think that. It's easier to think those thoughts, and it's easier to act on them because you have that feeling. You go back to that new love, and I will travel through hell and high water to get that one fish that I need, that I know I'm going to be able to make into a great meal for her, because it's, you know, I have that charge and that energy to do it. It's not even a pain in the ass. It's a moral imperative. I have to do it, and I want to do it. I want to feel that way about everything I do. You know, so it's like, and it's being able to prune away those things that are unnecessary. They give me the ability to then reinstall the things that I want. And it gives, you know, and then that becomes the new program.
It's so interesting, you know, because we've been, you know, reading and listening to Joe Dispenza a lot.
Okay, great.
Yeah. And one of the things that, you know, I'm going to lose it now, but what did he say? It's like, you know, if you give more value to something, you know, then the same exercise has more power and takes on more meaning, simply because you have a deeper understanding. And even just this conversation for me, it's like that has given me, you know, a different perspective of the same exercise.
Right.
You know, just practicing observation with the attitude of non-judgment, making more, not just energy available, but chemistry in my body available to be more effective in producing whatever result I'm going for. I mean, that's
huge.
A big deal.
That's huge.
Not, you know, it's you know, it's so easy to discount simplicity, but it's like there's so much power in that. It's
simple works.
It's big.
It's big.
Yeah.
And to know that happens almost on its own, and it gives you that help, rather than you having to, you know, really make all of these, well, I'm not going to do this and I am going to do that, and making these decisions all the time. Yes, there is that in the beginning, but it becomes a pattern where you see it, and then you contemplate it, and you deliver it without, you know, thought, almost in the direction that you want to do it, just the way, you know, your first response, if you're not conscious of it, your first response to, can you stop and get some milk on the way home, is, you know, that's it's not something you think about. It just happens, right? That moment just happens because it's wired together so many times that it just becomes the innate response. It's unconscious. We want to be conscious of those things. And when you become conscious of all of those aspects of your thoughts, which is what the observation does, it makes you conscious of it so that you can then say, is this something that I want to prune, or is that something that I want to sprout in the right direction? Right? Pruning and sprouting. It's amazing that neurology has used gardening,
right,
you know, symbology to you know, to do that, and that's exactly what happens. And if you can see that real time, you'll see that that's the case. You know, there are plenty of you know, technical machinery now that can see that in real time, how that works.
Probably find some good videos on
Oh,
YouTube
absolutely.
of that, I'm sure. I've never looked, but you know,
Yeah.
I've watched a few lectures where they do show imagery of that. It's fantastic.
And it's incredible.
Just being able to see it is like,
and it's in real time. You think that they're speeding up the film,
right.
but
It's not like a time lapse.
No.
Yeah.
And it's like it immediately, it's like there, and then boom, it shifts and connects to a different route, and that becomes.
I think that's
gets
that thing too. It's like
stronger.
when we do exercises like observation, and we have those judgments about what we're thinking. I think the judgment carries with it a sense of, you know, inflexibility, or, you know, like, oh, this is just how I am. You know?
Right.
But when you see those images of how quickly the brain can change,
Right.
it's like you really have this incredible biofeedback that you can change yourself.
Oh, you have the
Very
power
quickly.
to do that.
Yeah. So it's not that those thoughts are you, a person that can't change that, or that's going to have a pain in the ass time doing that, or you're bad, or you're good, or what. It's just, I mean, that's that whole, distance of neutrality of like, if this is just a pattern that, I can let it.
I could continue with it, or I can switch it to something that I desire more.
And it's not going to take forever to do that either.
No, it's not. Yeah. But we need to, it's sort of like when a pattern is set, we need to make it more pliable. It's like clay, right? And so when clay is cold and hard, it's hard to mold into something else, right? But if I make it warm, if I warm it, I make it more malleable, right? It's a lot easier to sort of transition into a snake, a dog, or whatever, So it's like,
and warming up the clay in this analogy is just doing these exercises.
That's right. It makes your neural network more plastic, meaning more changeable. It's much more changeable than anybody ever thought that it was, and we're learning more about that all the time. And so it gives us great hope that, again, using the language of science is getting, in a weird way, much closer to the language of magic, really, in a way, because there's really not much difference between the two. The closer and the more we look at it, it's, science being, neuroanatomy, neurology in general, and quantum physics. I mean, there's not a hell of a lot of difference. We're just using different vernacular, different words to state, the end result of what we're seeing and a way to apply it. We've been doing this for a long time.
It's very exciting to me.
It's an exciting time.
It's very cool, because you see on both sides of the fence. I mean, I don't know from the scientist point of view, but at least from the magician point of view, it's like looking at the evolution of science. It's like magicians beginning to have more respect for scientists, and scientists beginning to have more respect for magicians, or people that at least invest their time and energy in changing their world through changing their mind and doing energetic practices to
and putting, again, more emphasis on those things that produce consistent results. Rather than the things that are just sort of arbitrary and are part of the system, so I just have to keep doing them.
Right. We recognize that both, we
both
care about results. It's like, because that's the only thing that matters.
It's the only thing that matters in the end. It really is. I mean,
and that's how we discover the truth.
That's it.
If it doesn't produce results, then it's...
For me, I mean, the real impetus behind this whole series and behind the whole site and practice and all of that was, just being so tired of the, vitriolic language going back and forth about whose lineage is true and whose isn't, and which lodge is better and which way is better. And it's like, oh my gosh, if you guys put 1/10 of the energy into something that actually produced an end result for yourselves, instead of all of this crap back and forth and all of the letters and initiations and things behind your name, you would you'd be doing a hell of a lot better for yourself than you are. It's like, is this really the end result of this type of practice? Is this the end result of your spiritual practice, to be fighting over letters and who's who and what's what and whatever?
Well, it's just as divisive as any religion, looking at any other religion and saying...
Any of them, again, go back to the basic sayings, judge them by their fruits, It's like, what are you producing of value to this world? We don't need any more of this crap, it's like... And those of us who are, bent on sort of making a difference in the world, starting with ourselves, reaching out to our families, to our friends, to our communities and beyond, hopefully, if we do it well, then, I think there's more of us standing up and saying, this is what's important, not this other stuff. That's why you'll never see any kind of lineage or teachers or anything behind or after my name, because I don't believe in it. They know who they are, I give them all the credit in the world for my upbringing, starting with my grandparents and my parents and all the people that had amazing impact in my life, my teachers, formal teachers, and my students, who instructed me because I had to be able to explain it to them in a way that was relevant for them. And that made me stretch myself, because my experience isn't always their experience, and their experience was not my experience. So I had to come up with those things that would make sense to them to help them progress and to be in a place where they wanted to be. So the rest of it's just meaningless crap as far as I'm concerned. It just doesn't matter in the scheme of things. Show me what you can do. That's what matters. Show me a good life. Show me a good, what we would consider a good person, if we want to go with the good and bad thing again, which we tend not to. But by our society's standards, do you have compassion? Do you have good relationships? Do you have adequate wealth? Do you have, a good spiritual life? Something that's fulfilling to you? Do you have good health? Do you have robust health? It's like, show me a balance of those things, and I'll think that, you're doing pretty well. Whatever you're doing, it works for you, And that's all I judge somebody by. Show me what you do. Don't tell me what you do. Don't tell me what you are. Show me what you do by your example. And that's how I take you, Show me by your actions. And I think that's all that people ever need to do with me. Show me by your actions. Do you have those things in mind? I do. I'm not going to go into the garage and show you the Ferrari, which isn't there. So just so they're very clear, But I think that I live a very, very good life in all of those respects.
And this is how you've made that
happen.
And
this is how I've made that happen. Yeah. This is how I've made that happen. And I really, truly, honestly believe that every single person can do this in whatever form they want to do, whatever shape it takes for them, they can do it. Follow the principles and you will get there. You will balance all of those things out in the order that you want, and in the intensity that you want in each area. Not everybody's the same. So, and there's no judgment there. Everybody has a different sort of perspective on all of those areas, right? So it's like, if it's good for you, then it's good. So that's it. Yeah. So
again, today, the exercise for today,
non-judgment,
5-10 minutes of
observation, and the highlight being, the primary point being just observe, don't judge, and just write down in your journal what you see and what you observe. Is there any pattern there? And if there's not, there's not. And if there is, and if it's just random, that's okay. And if it is a pattern and you see certain things coming up, that's fine. But no judgment when you do it. You just write it down as you see it, and that's it. Very important.
As if it was a movie or somebody else or whatever. It's not.
Believe me, people beat themselves up way more than any good teacher ever would.
Yeah.
There's no way. It's not necessary for us to do it. You guys do it way better than anybody else can. So
the best.
You are the best at doing that. That's right. Yeah. So as I was when I was doing that. So so it's the same. It's Absolutely. The same. Yeah. All right.
Cool.
That's it.
See you tomorrow.
Sounds good.